Microsoft plans to remove kernel-level anti-cheats. Microsoft plans to kill kernel-level anti-cheat. Could be massive for Linux gaming. Microsoft paves the way for Linux gaming success with plan that would kill kernel-level anti-cheat. Microsoft plans to remove kernel access for security solutions which would affect kernel-level anti-cheats such as Vanguard, BattlEye, and Faceit. All of which are sourcing from one singular article from Notebookcheck. Now, all of this would be great, okay? It would be wonderful if it wasn't a complete and utter fabrication by an outlet that didn't read the article they are sourcing. And here is the very fun thing about nonsense like this. Microsoft paves the way for Linux gaming success with plan that would kill kernel-level anti-cheat. The great thing about things like this is it doesn't actually matter if it's true or not, because there have been a lot of situations like this where one article just says something that's complete nonsense. Another article references that article, another article references that article, and then another one references back to the start. And now you've basically created a loop and nobody realizes that the entire reference was made up and it never actually happened. And just in the confines of this one topic, this is not the first time this has happened. Basically, right after the CrowdStrike situation, we saw posts like this. Microsoft preparing to taking steps to kicking antivirus, anti-cheat, etc. softwares from the kernel. This is linked to an article from The Verge. The difference in this case, unlike the Notebookcheck situation, is The Verge article is fine. This one is nonsense. It's just the Redditor didn't read the Verge article. In this case, a month ago, it was about minimizing and restricting third-party kernel access, not blocking it, but putting systems in place where developers don't feel the need, where if they want to build a security solution like this, they need it to have kernel-level access. It may still need to operate within the kernel, but it shouldn't have access to every little thing in the system. It should be a lot more confined, a lot more manageable, and something that isn't going to bring down the entire world's computing infrastructure. And because some people just don't know how to read or willingly don't want to understand it, they saw restricting and thought blocking, where those don't at all mean the same thing. But let's see what it's about this time. So whilst the author didn't read it all the way through, this Notebookcheck article is referencing a blog post from Microsoft, taking steps that drive resiliency and security for Windows customers, published on September 12th. This summarized the recent Windows Endpoint Security Ecosystem Summit taking place on Tuesday, September 10th. This brought together a bunch of industry experts from companies like Broadcom, ESET, SentinelOne, Sophos, Trellix, and yes, even CrowdStrike. I know some people want CrowdStrike to go out of business. I'm one of those people. I think people need to lose their job. I really do support the company being sued because there was no reason that code ever should have been deployed. There is no way it would have passed any internal testing, assuming they had internal testing. Regardless of that, though, the company isn't out of business and is still a very big member of the business space, and that's not going to change just because of one event. Some companies obviously would move away, but they're still going to be around. Now, the reason the summit happened is to discuss the complexities of modern security, what they need from Microsoft in Windows, and what really needs to change in Windows to make situations like the CrowdStrike disaster much harder in the future and preferably not happen again at that scale. So we'll skip the fluff and talk about the important part. Our summit dialogue looked at longer-term steps serving resilience and security goals. Here, our conversation explored new platform capabilities Microsoft plans to make available in Windows, building on the security investments we have made in Windows 11. Windows 11's improved security posture and security defaults enable the platform to provide more security capabilities to solution providers outside of kernel mode. Now, keep in mind, more security capabilities outside of kernel mode. This is something that already existed in the past. But I think this might have been one of the first points the author tripped up on, because there are parts of the blog post in Notebookcheck, so clearly they read it at least a little bit. But they probably saw outside of kernel mode and thought, Okay, so that's gonna be the only thing you can do. Both our customers and ecosystem partners have called on Microsoft to provide additional security capabilities outside of the kernel. Again, use of additional and outside of kernel mode, which along with SDP can be used to create highly available security solutions. At the summit, Microsoft and partners discussed the requirements and key challenges in creating a new platform which can meet the needs of security vendors. Some of the areas discussed include performance needs and challenges outside of kernel mode. So there's a lot of mentions of outside of kernel mode. If you're not reading the blog post properly, I understand how you can write this, but really, you should make sure you understand the blog post before you go and publish something about it on a fairly well-known site. Not really reputable for when it comes to like stuff like this, but well-known enough that people are going to find it. Anti-tampering protection for security products, security sensor requirements, development and collaboration principles between Microsoft and the ecosystem, and secure by design goals for future platform. Up until at least this point, I can understand how you could get confused, but let me show you the greatest evidence I have that nobody in these Reddit posts actually read the post from Microsoft, and the author did not read the entire post before making this article. At the bottom of the article is a bunch of quotes from various industry members who attended the summit. Adam Bromwich, Drew Bagley, Essett, Rick Smith, and a bunch of others, okay? The one that I want to talk about is the one from Essett. Essett supports modifications to the Windows ecosystem that demonstrate measurable improvements to stability on condition that any change must not weaken security, affect performance, or limit the choice of cybersecurity solutions. It remains imperative that kernel access remains an option for use by cybersecurity products to allow continued innovation and the ability to detect and block future cyber threats. We look forward to the continued collaboration on this important initiative. Now, you might say, well, this is from Essett. This isn't from Microsoft. This isn't Microsoft saying that they're not going to block it. This is a blog post from Microsoft, from their Vice President of Enterprise and OS Security. If they had the plan to block this, why would they include a quote from a company that specifically doesn't want it blocked? Obviously, the reason for that is because they're not blocking it, because nowhere else in the blog post that is referenced do they say they are going to block it. They say it's going to be restricted. They say they want to do things outside the kernel. You know, like what we saw the first time this happened, that people didn't read the post that was being referenced. Now, let's just imagine for a second that Microsoft actually was banning third-party kernel access. It wouldn't make the claim in the article actually true. Removing kernel-level security software would mean that anti-cheat software would have to all be implemented with user access, making it much less intrusive and far easier to emulate with translation layers like Wine or Valve's Proton. Theoretically, this would make it easier for devices like the Steam Deck to run games like Paladins and Fortnite, whether Tim Sweeney likes it or not. Many games that use kernel-level anti-cheat software like EAC Easy Anti-Cheat are not compatible with Linux, despite that compatibility reportedly being a single toggle in software. However, game developers and publishers are hesitant to enable Linux compatibility for some reason. Okay, couple of problems here. Firstly, it's not user access, it's user space, which already indicates to me that you have no idea what you're talking about. Secondly, yes, it technically would make it easier for translation layers to work with this anti-cheat software, but this is not true. It will not theoretically make it easier for devices like the Steam Deck to run Paladins and Fortnite or Rainbow Six Siege or any of these other games that use anti-cheat that don't enable the Linux support, because Wine is not a virtual machine. I know Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator. Maybe they should add Wine is not an emulator or a virtual machine. If a developer says, we don't want to enable the Linux support, whether it's in kernel space or user space doesn't change anything. If they don't enable the Linux support in the anti-cheat, it's still gonna trip up the anti-cheat and still block the player, in some cases banning them because the anti-cheat solutions are very, very aggressive. Now there's one thing I want to make very clear. I understand why people are grasping at straws and want kernel level anti-cheat to go away. As put really well by Tom Warren of The Verge, Valorant on PC had an issue hours ago where its anti-cheat system, which runs at the Windows kernel level, was crashing some Ethernet connections. I and many others had to reboot our machines to get connectivity back just a few minutes after having Valorant running, because Vanguard user mode service saturated the connection and then connectivity died. A Riot Games senior anti-cheat analyst was able to address the issue based on user reports. I hope Microsoft is looking to move anti-cheat systems like Vanguard out of the kernel because they're far too intrusive and prone to issues. Microsoft really needs to solve the PC cheating issues at a platform level instead of devs having to create kernel level solutions that risk the security and stability of your machine. All of this is a totally fair point, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Now, I do want to give very big props to one outlet that actually read the blog post, understood the blog post, and didn't just make something up or read the Reddit titles and reuse what they were saying. Gaming on Linux with Liam Dorr. Microsoft Windows kernel changes don't suddenly mean big things for Linux gaming. Yes. And specifically goes into the Notebookcheck article and basically says a lot of what I said here. It's nonsense. They didn't read the blog post. This is not actually happening. Liam does really great work. Gaming on Linux is obviously mostly about gaming, but there are various other things covered as well. If you don't read the site, please go ahead and do so. But let me know your thoughts down below. Did this seem too good to be true? Did it seem like somebody was sort of lying about what was going on, or did you read the blog post from the start? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these missing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe, Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and always check the sources.
Like this.